Hello and welcome to the OhSewGecko channel. Today's tutorial we are sewing the new free My Little Pockets pattern from OhSewGecko. It always happens, you put down your glasses, you can't find them. You put down your mobile phone and you can't find that either. I don't know about you, but a lot of the time my trousers don't have pockets in them, or I'm wearing a cardigan or a jacket or something that doesn't have a pocket that's even big enough for my mobile phone, and it ends up falling on the floor. What do? Well, you sew yourself a My Little Pocket. Let's have a look. This one here is the glasses case My Little Pocket, and as you can see it's got what looks like two little buttons on the front, but these are not any buttons, these are braces clips. So I'll turn them around, and what happens is they unclip, clip onto your clothes, and off you go. This one is for glasses, there's a smaller one for pens, or you can have one that's bigger. This is the one we're sewing today. This is the mobile phone case, and I've put a glasses pocket on the front as well. So actually, as I'm buzzing around the house, I don't need to put anything down. I can just attach this, drop in my phone, drop in my glasses, and off I go. But what about if you've got a bag or something else, or you're traveling in the car? Well, you can change the attachments depending on what you need your pocket for. Two larger sizes of pocket as well. So in total, you've got 5 sizes. This one here is the large pocket pouch. You can see it's quite large. This one I've attached lobster clasp, but you could use the braces clips instead. On the front, I've got the mobile phone pocket and the glasses pocket. This one is going in our camper van. Slightly smaller, I'll show you them together. Slightly smaller is the small pocket pouch, and this one I've used the braces clips on. This has the glasses pocket and a pen pocket, and it's really great for craft projects, or again if you're in your camper van, you're in your car. These clips, they can clip onto the back of a seat, they can go inside a bag that you already have, can go anywhere. What you could do is actually put them all together. So we've got the large one here. You could use a pocket on the front. So instead of making a whole pouch, you can just use one panel and attach that. Then after that, you could, if you wanted, not do it as a pouch, just do it as a pocket on the front with your mobile phone, do a pocket on the front with your glasses case, and you could do one for a pen pocket. So actually you can layer up these pockets, they all fit together. One main pouch and pockets on the front. Another idea could be to actually stack them. Do that this way. So using the handle attachment for the lobster clasp, instead you could put a D-ring on, attach that to the bottom, put a lobster clasp onto this one, and you can hang them any way you like. So for today's tutorial, we are making the smaller mobile phone pouch with a lobster clasp, but I will take you through how to make the attachment for the braces clips as well. If you don't have any hardware, you don't have any lobster clasps or anything like that, it really doesn't matter. I'll also show you how to adapt the handle so you can use a thread or ribbon. So you could hang your glasses here around your neck, or hang them around a car seat or anywhere else. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. Right, let's get sewing. So the first bit we're going to start looking at is the different attachments that you could use for these pockets. Now we've got our usual lobster clasp here. This one is for braces or something that you would normally see. Again, this is a 1 inch, this one is a 1 inch, so 2.54 centimetres. I've got a D-ring here. Now what you could do is use the handle attachment for the lobster clasp and just attach a D-ring to the bottom of your pouches if you wanted to hang something from the bottom, or you wanted to make them so as they attached in a row, so you don't just have one pocket pouch, you could put some on the bottom and then create more. Now this is the unusual one that everybody's talking about, because on the front of your pocket it looks like a button. And it's not, it's actually a braces clip. So if we look, this one has a button on the front, which is attached, it doesn't come off. And then it's a clip. So to open it, this comes down, and then you'll see it has an opening here. So this is what then clips onto your clothes. You snap it shut, and then your pocket sits on the front. Now what that means is that if you have used this, you can just take your pocket off and leave this attached to whatever you're using. If it's in your bag or on a pair of trousers or something, you can actually leave this and just take the pocket off and move it somewhere else, your pouch. In the pattern, you've got two different handle sizes. So we've got the pattern piece 7, which is this one. This is the handle for the lobster clasp. And then we've got pattern piece 6, which is this one, which is the one we will use with the braces clips like this. You can adapt these however you want. The one for the braces clip is a square. The one for the lobster clasp is a rectangle, because obviously it needs to be that little bit longer. So however you choose to use these, you can. If you were using a fraying fabric, you could just sew this right sides together down the sides, turn it through. So what you would end up with is sealed here. And then if you wanted, you could then fold it again, stitch this into the top of your pouch so you've got a channel here, and then you could use a cord or a ribbon or something like that instead of using a clasp if you don't have one. This one, which is for the lobster clasp, is designed to fold in half and half again. So it's designed to use like this. And again, you can use this one with the lobster clasp. You could use it with a D-ring. You can use it with whatever you want. So you've got two different choices of handles depending on how you want to create the attachment for your pocket pouch. So for today's tutorial, I'm making the mobile phone pocket pouch. So I've got two outer fabric, both of those are cork, and I've got two lining fabric. So the mobile phone pocket pouch is pattern piece 3. So I've decided with my mobile phone pouch that I'm going to add a glasses pocket pouch onto the front. So I've got a pattern piece 4 glasses pocket pouch, one outer and one lining. Now the reason I have two of these and one of these is because this one is going to be my pouch and this one is going to be a pocket on the front. So if you're only making a pocket, you will need one of each. If I wanted to make the glasses pouch, I would have had two outer, two lining. Also going to be using my lobster clasp here. So then I've got the pattern piece 7 handle and my lobster clasp. For this tutorial, I'm also going to show you how to make the pattern piece 6 handle with the braces clip on. I'm just going to show you how to sew this. So we'll start by working on the one for the braces clip. Now this is a square, so we'll just use two sides. I'm going to fold in one side, take some clips, folding it in 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. Doesn't have to be exact, it's just to fold in the raw edges, that's all it's for. Put that in place. And we're going to fold it at the bottom. It is in. Now if you're using a fraying fabric, you can of course just iron this into place. It's absolutely fine. See, I'm using a non-fraying, it's a little bit more awkward. That's lining up at the bottom. There we go. Okay, let's flatten that out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew around all 4 sides using a 3mm stitch length, and I'm going to do that 1/8 of an inch or 3mm from the edge. And then afterwards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a second row of stitching. It's just for decorative purposes, but it also helps to hold things in place a little bit better. So I'm going to do that about 1/4 inch inside. So here's our finished piece. Now, depending on the pouch that you're creating, you may want to do 1 or 2 buttonholes. Some machines have a buttonhole function with a buttonhole foot. If you don't have one, it doesn't matter. You can still do this. The one that I created, I don't have a buttonhole foot for my machine. Well, I do, but I have no idea where it is. So what you need to do is mark a line or 2 lines equal distances apart on your handle. If you don't have a buttonhole foot or the capacity to do that on your machine, just measure 2 lines here, the width of your button, depending on if you've got the same ones as me or not, and then sew a rectangle around. When you've done that, then you can slice through. Alternatively, use the buttonhole function on your machine. And there you go. So with this one, I would probably only do 1 for the mobile phone pouch. However, if you've got a larger size mobile phone, you might find that 2 might be better if it's heavier. And then you can just place them equal distances apart. So we've put all that aside. Let's get on with the handle that we're going to do. So I'm going to do one with a lobster clasp, and so I've got the larger pattern piece, the rectangular one, to do with that. So what I'm going to do is fold wrong sides together, fold down the center of the length, and I'm going to fold in one side, fold in the other side to the center, and then fold them in half and clip that in place. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch around all 4 sides with a 3mm stitch length, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. There we are, that's all stitched. So I'm going to take my lobster clasp. And it doesn't matter which way around you do this, it's entirely up to you. This is showing ever so slightly at the side here, so I'm going to put that on the inside. So I'm going to fold it in half. That won't notice quite so much. Slide on my lobster clasp. And clip that together for the moment. Now, if you wanted to, you could stitch across here to hold your lobster clasp in place. Now, my fabric is incredibly thick, so my machine probably won't want to do that. So I'm not going to. It's absolutely fine. You don't have to. If you're using maybe a lighter fabric, you might want to stitch across here because this is quite heavy. So bringing in one of my pattern piece 3, this is the outer fabric. If you want, you'll notice on the top it's got the center point mark, so you can just match up and draw a line. Alternatively, if you haven't printed the pattern pieces, you can just fold in half, find the center, and that's there. So I've marked the center point on the outer pattern piece 3, and remember this is the back, so whichever pocket pouch you're making, you want the piece that's for the back, and just mark your center point. Now, bringing in the one that we made earlier, just to show you how this works. We're only making 1 here. If you were making this one, you would need to mark 2 points. And on the larger pattern pieces, the 2 points are actually marked on the pattern piece for you. So you don't need to measure anything. They are marked there for you. So for this one, you just find the midpoint, squeeze or mark, and line up. Okay. Line up the center pieces with this lying on top of the outer. Put that to one side because we're actually going to use this one. Now it's entirely up to you. You can line it up like this. For me, that's a little bit bulky because, as I said before, my fabrics are quite bulky. So I'm actually going to put mine to one side, more on a diagonal. I've got the center point here, and I'm lining up the corner edges, the outer corner edge. You'll see this overlaps a little, that's fine, it's absolutely okay. If you wanted to, you could move it down a little further. Entirely up to you, there's lots here for you to be able to do that. I'm going to bring mine back just a little because I want it to hang down a little further and clip that in place. Even if you wanted, you could measure this distance. I'm quite happy with that. I think mine's okay. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm just going to baste this in place to make it a little bit easier for me. So really long stitch length, nothing fancy, and I'm doing it 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters in from the edge. Is just to hold it in place. I'm also going to back stitch at the edges of the handle just to give it a little bit extra security. There we are, that's basted in place. You can see really long stitch lengths just to hold it so we can remove the clips. Now I'm going to take one of my lining fabrics. Again, this is the one you want to be on the back. So if you have a preference as to which is the prettier fabric, so I'm going to take these and I'm going to put them right sides together. Ooh, fluff. Lining up across the top edge, and we'll clip that in place. Because this is quite bulky now with this here, I've actually put clips one either side just to make sure that that stays level, because sometimes with the bulkier parts in the middle it can shift a little bit. So I've just got those there as an added extra. Now I'm going to stitch across the top edge here with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to use a 3 millimeter stitch length. Again, I'm going to back stitch when I get to the edges of the handle just for a little extra security. There we are, that's stitched, and you can see where I've back stitched at the edges. Now I have started and stopped just a little in from the edges. The reason for that is to make it easier when we're stitching later. I wouldn't trim these down. You can trim these down if you want, but I like to leave them there again just for a little extra security. So I'm going to turn this wrong sides together, pull this handle up out of the way. If you're creating a larger pouch or your machine allows you to, you can top stitch at the end, but with the smaller pouches, the mobile phone pouch, the glasses pouch and the pen pocket, you'll probably need to top stitch now. Certainly my machine didn't like top stitching the smaller pieces, so I'm going to do it now. So fold them wrong sides together, line it up, clip across the top edge just to keep it nice and neat. If you're using a fraying fabric, you could just iron this. Make sure you pull your handle out the way. You don't want any accidents. And I'm going to top stitch across the top edge with a 3 millimeter stitch length, 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. If you wanted, you could then again, especially if you've done the handle with the braces clip, you could do 2 rows of stitching just to make it look pretty. And again, starting and stopping about 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch in from the edge, because that helps us when we need to join the two pieces together afterwards. So let's take this to the sewing machine. And there we are, that's the back panel completed. So let's make our pocket for the front. Here's my pocket. Now this is the glasses pocket pouch. But because we're using it just as a pocket, I've got my one outer and my one lining. I'm going to put them right sides together, more fluff. And I'm going to clip them around all 4 sides. Starting at the top corner here, I'm going to sew down the side all the way around back to the top. 1 centimeter seam allowance or 3/8 of an inch, 3 millimeter stitch length again, but I'm going to leave myself a turning gap in the side. Now your turning gap needs to be wide enough for you to be able to turn the whole thing through. If you're using a thinner fabric, you don't need to leave too big a gap, but because this is cork that I'm using, it's quite rigid. If you're using something like vinyl, you do need to leave yourself quite a large gap right here, so a few inches at least. Okay, so there we are. You can see where I've left my turning gaps. Let's cut that. Just trim the threads. Both sides. I'm now going to take my pinking shears. If you don't have some of these, it's absolutely fine. You can just trim in, but it's fine. I'm not going to trim down where our turning gap is, because if I trim that down, it's going to make it really difficult to fold in to be able to stitch afterwards. So I'm going to leave a space here, just come in there, and I'm going to trim down by about a half. And I'm going to trim quite close to the scissors, close to the corners, so we get some nice sharp corners. Be careful not to cut the threads. If you don't have scissors like this, you only need to cut into where the corners are rounded. Just chip in with your scissors like this, and it will just help to turn through. Otherwise, trim down by half. So let's turn that through. So that's turned through, and I've poked out the corners really, really well. Now, if you're using a lighter fabric, you can, of course, take this to the iron it all into place nice and neat. Now, because I'm using cork, it's a little bit bouncy, so I've rolled the edges, turn it through. I'm just going to clip them to help it set into place. This is our turning gap, so I'm just going to put my fingers in and pull, and it will fold in. Now, of course, the cork has folded in nicely. My lining hasn't, so I'm just going to turn it round, clip that in, make sure it's folded, work my way along, making sure everything's folded and neat. You may need to adjust a little. There we are. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch across the top edge only. I'm not stitching around the sides where I've put my clips. I'm only doing the top edge. Same as before, a 3mm stitch length, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch in from the edge, and then, like we did earlier with the braces clip, I'm going to do a second row of stitching, about 1/4 of an inch, 6mm in from the top, just for decorative purposes. There we go, 2 rows of stitching. You can't see them fantastically well, you can see it a little better on the back. Bringing back the outer, this is the one for the front. And I've got my pocket, which I've top stitched across the top edge only. I haven't done the sides. I'm going to find the midpoint of both pieces. As I said before, the pattern pieces have the centres marked for you, so you can either use the pattern piece or just fold in half. Your pouch needs to be a minimum of 2 centimetres down from the top because of the seam allowance. If you are doing 2 pockets on the front, you will need to find the centre point and arrange your pockets however you feel you want to. Obviously, this one is the glasses pocket and the pen pocket. So I've measured down from the top a distance, and then measured in from the sides, and just laid them out however I want to. Remember, your seam allowances on these pocket pouches is 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. So you will need to make sure that you have that as a minimum all the way around, however you lay out your pockets. So bringing this back, I've measured down 2 centimetres, 3/4 of an inch. If you want, you can draw a line across to help you line up your pocket. Remember, 1 centimetre minimum, 3/8 of an inch minimum all the way around, to make sure that we don't get caught in the seam allowance with our pockets. Take this across to the sewing machine. If you want, you can either pin this in place if you're able to. Obviously, I'm using cork, so I can't use pins. So I'm going to be really, really careful that this doesn't move when I take it to the sewing machine. There we go, so it's the pocket sewn on. So I've just stitched around the 1, 2, 3 sides, tried to keep it as straight as possible while I'm sewing. There we are, the top is open. Now you might want to check now that your glasses fit, or whatever pocket is you've done. There you go, my glasses fit nicely in there. Happy with that. Let's take them out. Okay, so now we're going to take back our other lining fabric. I'm going to place it right sides together and clip across the top. Take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew across the top with a 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that's using a 3mm stitch length. There we are, so turn that through. If you want, you can trim down the seam allowance, which I might do that quickly. Trim down the seam allowance by half. I know we didn't trim down the seam allowance on the last one. If you wanted to, you could. Let's bring this one back. We can just trim down like a little bit here next to the edge. We'll leave the centre longer to account for these tabs. Get that out of the way. I'll turn this through. Same as we did before. Roll the top into place, or if you've got fabrics that you can iron that into place. And now I'm going to top stitch across the top edge the same as I did on the back panel. And there we are, there's the back panel and the front one. Okay, so now we need to join these two pieces together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the back panel and lay it right side up, spreading out the outer and lining. And then we're going to take the front panel and do the same. So we've got outer and outer, lining and lining. I'm going to put them right sides together. Okay, so we've got the outer with the outer and the lining with the lining. Okay, and we're going to join together at the seam the two outers. Now this is why we left our little bit of a seam allowance here. I'll take one of my clips, a clip here, the outer, and then I'm going to do the same with the lining. Do the same here, make sure the outers are joined together, the linings joined together, all lined up. Okay, so now I've got those lined up and I'm happy with them. I'm going to clip around all the way around the rest, but I'm going to leave a turning gap. So I'm going to do it in the side of this one because it's not an overly big pocket pouch. In the larger ones, the small pocket pouch and the large pocket pouch, you can leave your turning gap in the bottom if you want, but because this is not overly wide, the mobile phone pouch, the glasses and the pen, you'll probably need to do it in the side. There we are, I've turned it sideways for you. So here is my turning gap here, and as I always do, I've got my red stop clip, green go clip, so I know that I need to stop here, back stitch really well, lift my needle, jump across, back stitch really well, and then I can go again. And we're going to stitch all the way around all sides apart from our turning gap using a 1 centimetre 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, 3mm stitch length as we've done all the way through the pattern. And then because I'm using cork, because it's a thicker fabric, I'm actually going to stitch a second row of stitching around the outside just inside the seam allowance, and that's to stop my stitches from showing or from pulling too much. If you're using a lighter fabric like a quilting cotton or something like that, you don't need to do that. It is really only with the heavier fabric. So I'll be repeating my stitching on this side, but not on this side. There we go, so that is double stitched around the cork side. It's a little wonky, it's okay. And you can see here on the lining where I've left my turning gap. So as we did before, I'm going to trim down the seam allowances by half, and on these corners, I'm going to use my pinking shears to cut around those. If you don't have them, as we said before, you can just cut into the corners like that just to help you turn through. Okay, so there we go. So I've trimmed up by half, but I haven't trimmed where the turning gap is, the same as we did before. We're going to leave that so as it makes it easier later on. Now, to turn the whole thing through. This can be a little tricky on the smaller pouches, but just persevere, it will work, it's fine. The lining really, really well. It's easier to do it now than later. Okay, that's done. Just trim that thread. Okay, same as we did before, we're going to pull this together, clip in place. Now we're going to close up this seam with a 2.5mm stitch length, 1/8 of an inch, 3mm from the edge, and I'll just start here and stop here. There we are, that's stitched. Tuck this in. This can be a little fiddly, especially with the smaller pockets, the glasses pocket and the pen pocket. So you might need a ruler or a stiletto or something to help you turn it through. This one's not too bad because I can actually get my hand in there. So here we are. I'll bring in my husband's phone because his is an S25. It's the Ultra as well, so it's really big and it has a case on it. So let's just show you. That slots in there nicely. It's got a little bit overhanging, but that's okay. Then I'll show you with my sunglasses. My sunglasses can go in the front.